Hello YouTube. Today we're going to examine MatPat's latest and greatest theory. The one everyone has been waiting for. The timeline placement of Breath of the Wild. TLDR, this theory is wrong. So let's get into some of the best evidence he's presented. Starting off with the Lionels. Matt is absolutely correct when he says that the Lionels only appear in the adult timeline. I won't argue with that. That is a solid piece of evidence. Or it would be, if two counter pieces of evidence did not already exist. Those two counter pieces of evidence are the Koroks and the Rito. They only appear in the adult timeline. Matt knows this, and he even explicitly acknowledges it within his video. So why does he then point to the Lionels as evidence for the failure timeline later? Isn't that a bit hypocritical? The next more solid piece of evidence he presents, not in chronological order mind you, is the map being the same as the maps within the failure timeline. This might be his most solid piece of evidence, and yet it holds no water at all. Why, I hear you asking? Well, two reasons. First is, of course, Zoro's domain. The actual appearance of the domain is virtually the same, with a few minor improvements, in Twilight Princess. And the Zoro appear very similar to the way they do in the child timeline. Next is Lake Hylia Bridge. It also appears to be the same, but a bit more damaged as time has taken its toll. So the map being the same is great evidence. However, the landmarks in the game contradict that theory. To put a final nail in the coffin, the map of Ocarina of Time looks nothing like the map in Breath of the Wild. So the theory that the maps being the same means that these games take place in the same dimension is totally false. The last two pieces of evidence he presents are not just compelling, they are ingenious. I'm just kidding, they're completely stupid. The first one he presents, not in chronological order, mind you, is the yellow headband theory. He says, correctly, that Link only has a yellow headband in the adult timeline. I would say until Breath of the Wild, to add on to that. I'm sorry, Matt, but this theory is dumb. It's possible that in the dimension that Breath of the Wild takes place in, that this is the first time he is wearing a yellow headband. Not only that, it's also possible that he wore a yellow headband in the past during a game yet to be released in the child timeline. None of that evidence in particular restricts Link to any specific dimension. It's just a commonality, a coincidence, a possibility. It is not a fact. Lastly, Matt says that Ganon had given up human form, and thus this was the failure timeline. Because in the failure timeline, Ganon gives up his human form. No, Matt, not true. Ganon already gave up his human form in another game in the child timeline. Specifically, in The Legend of Zelda 4 Swords Adventures. He appears as a pig, and not as Ganondorf. Just Ganon, the pig monster. So that theory is now also debunked. Okay, so now let's get to my theory. And remember, kids, this is just a theory. It's not serious. I don't hate Matt. In fact, I love most of his content. So me debunking him and presenting counter arguments is only me interacting with him in a way that I perceive to be positive. So here is my theory. It takes place in the child timeline. Let me present my first piece of evidence, and probably my strongest piece of evidence. Zelda references the hero of Twilight, specifically in one of the major cutscenes of the game, the first cutscene of the game that you can discover. Now, Matt argues that this means nothing because in foreign translations, Zelda references the hero of wind and the sea, and that's all good and fine. But here's the final nail in the coffin that is Matt Pat's theory. She references the hero of time in all translations. Wait, why is this significant? I hear you asking. I'll tell you why. Because if the hero of time failed and Ganon succeeded, then how does Princess Zelda know of him, and why is he a significant historical figure? There's an old saying. It goes, history is written by the victors. Thus, it follows that if Link failed to defeat Ganon, and this is the downfall or failure timeline, then he would be a complete unknown figure in history. Especially if what Matt Pat said is true, and every time you blow yourself up with the bombs in Ocarina of Time, you're letting Ganon succeed. So Link could have died and been a complete unknown in the failed timeline. Thus, the hero of time being remembered as a hero in Breath of the Wild destroys any possibility of that game taking place in the failed timeline. And he clearly is remembered as a hero by multiple cultures in this game. Like the Zoro, for instance, who carved this into one of their monuments. Long, long ago, in a past more distant than even the Great Calamity or the creation of the divine beast Varuta, there was a Zoro princess named Ruto. We know that she was an attendant to the Zora patron deity, and that she was a fair and lively girl, beloved to all. Around that same time, an evil man with designs on ruling the world appeared, bringing disaster upon Zora's domain. It is said that Ruto then awoke as a sage, facing this foe alongside the Princess of Hyrule and the hero of legend. He would not be a hero of legend had he failed. So Matt Pat's theory is successfully debunked through and through. So, now let's go back to my theory. What exactly firmly places this game in the child timeline? Well, it's a side quest. In one particular side quest, you actually find the mirror of Twilight that was once used to contain and seal away Ganon. This is definitively in the game and is definitely canon. Also, again, Zelda explicitly mentions the hero of Twilight. Not only that, the sages are mentioned frequently as well. While the other two timelines are referenced through Easter eggs, only the Twilight timeline is explicitly mentioned on several occasions, both in the story and in the side quest. It is pretty clear that by the American translation that the game resides in the child timeline. And even if you look at the foreign translations that reference the hero of wind, it still references the hero of time, consistently throughout every translation. Therefore, it is not possible that this game takes place in the adult timeline. MatPat, thank you for doing a great theory. I thoroughly enjoyed debunking it. I look forward to more of your theories. Please keep making videos. I am a loyal subscriber. Thank you, MatPat. This video was entirely inspired by your efforts. That is all.